I was standing in a bookstore the other day looking at the children's section, and I felt this very specific, very modern anxiety kick in.
Oh, I know that feeling.
I think every parent or educator listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. You want to raise these culturally aware global citizens.
Right.
You want your kids to be the kind of people who respect differences and, understand the wider world.
It's this huge pressure. We aren't just raising kids anymore. We feel like we're responsible for the future of, like, geopolitical relations.
Exactly. So in that moment of panic, what do? You grab the picture book about festivals around the world.
Of course.
Maybe you buy a kit to make a specific dish on a holiday, or you put up a flag in the classroom. You curate this little, it's a small world tour.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and this is the part that keeps me up at night, you're left wondering, did that actually work? Or did I just teach my 3-year-old that culture is basically just funny hats and different snacks?
That is the central tension of early childhood education right there. We have these massive, complex, goals-raising, anti-racist, inclusive, empathetic children, but the toolkit we instinctively reach for is often surprisingly superficial.
We're trying to build a skyscraper with a plastic hammer.
And we're trying to build it on a foundation, the child's brain, that is still figuring out the mechanics of gravity and how to use a spoon.
Right, and that is exactly what we are unpacking in this deep dive.
We've got a stack of fascinating sources today, ranging from very practical curriculum guides, specifically looking at how Māori culture is taught in New Zealand, to some really heavy-hitting critiques from UNESCO on how we conceptualize intercultural education.
So the mission today is really specific. We want to move away from that tourist approach, the flags and festivals, and find a grounded framework for teaching culture to children aged, say, 2 to 6.
Yeah.
We want to figure out how to do it without tokenism, without performance, and without over-explaining things they physically cannot understand.
There's a line from one of the curriculum guides that I think really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about.
Okay.
It said, "There's a lot of advice about teaching culture to kids. I want to strip it back to what children under 6 can actually understand."
Which sounds simple, almost obvious. But when you look at the typical advice parents get, stripping it back is actually a pretty radical shift.
It is, because most advice is sadly designed for older kids. We try to explain history or politics or injustice to a 3-year-old.
And we get frustrated when it just bounces off.
But the reality is they literally don't have the hardware for it yet.
So let's start there. Let's look at that hardware. What is the developmental reality of a 2 to 6-year-old? Because I think a lot of us, myself included, we drastically overestimate what they can grasp.
That's the classic trap.
We think because they can repeat a sentence, they understand the concept.
We project our adult understanding of the world onto them, but the research in our sources is very clear. Children in this age range think concretely, not abstractly. They are trapped in the now.
Meaning timelines are essentially useless.
Completely. I mean, think about it. A child who thinks yesterday could mean a minute ago or last Christmas cannot comprehend the concept of colonization.
Right.
They can't grasp a treaty signed in 1840 or the migration of peoples over centuries. To them, that isn't history, it's just noise.
That's a humbling realization. I've definitely tried to explain long ago to a toddler and just watched their eyes glaze over.
We all have.
So if history is off the table and abstract concepts are out, what are the actual hooks we can hang culture on? What actually stays on the wall?
Our sources identify 4 big ones. These are the universal concepts that a toddler or preschooler actually understands, regardless of where they're from. The first is belonging.
Belonging. Okay, that feels intuitive. They know who their people are.
Exactly. They understand that people fit into families, and families fit into places. This is my family, this is my house. That is solid ground for them.
So you don't start with the nation state, you start with the family unit.
Start with family.
Okay.
Okay, so what's the second hook?
The second is care. This is universal, looking after things.
Like animals, plants, each other.
Yeah. If a baby is crying, the child understands sad. If a plant is dry, they understand thirsty. It's tangible.
I like that. It's action-based. You don't have to explain the theory of empathy or environmental stewardship.
You just show the act of care.
Precisely. The third hook is routine. Children are obsessed with routine. They understand that we do things a certain way. We eat, we sleep, we greet people.
And because they rely so heavily on their own routine, that becomes the point of comparison.
Exactly. They can understand that other people might do those same tasks differently. We take our shoes off here, they keep them on there.
So it's a comparison of concrete actions, not values.
It's not they are weird, it's just their routine is different.
Right.
Which leads perfectly to the fourth hook, difference without hierarchy. This is crucial, and honestly, it's a bit of a golden window in child development.
How so?
Children naturally notice differences. They see skin color, they hear accents, they notice clothing.
And I feel like parents get so embarrassed when kids point that out loud in the grocery store.
We do, we hush them up. But, and this is the key insight from the research, they don't assign better or worse to those differences unless an adult does it for them.
So they're just observational, not naturally judgmental.
Exactly. The judgment isn't factory installed, it's downloaded from us.
Or from society, yeah.
But this is where we get into the danger zone, as one of the texts calls it. We know what they can grasp, but we need to be really honest about what they cannot grasp.
Okay.
The sources list 3 big blockers: history as a system, abstract symbolism, and politics.
Politics seems obvious. I'm not discussing tax policy or voting rights with a toddler.
Right.
But what do you mean by abstract symbolism?
Well, think about a flag. It's the go-to symbol for culture in most classrooms. To you and me, a flag represents a nation, a history, a government, a struggle. It's a loaded symbol.
And to a 3-year-old,
They're the colorful rectangle.
it's just a shape.
It is a colorful rectangle. If you spend 20 minutes explaining that the stars on the flag represent states or colonies, or the red stands for bravery, you are wasting your breath. They can't decode the metaphor.
They don't have the cognitive capacity to let one thing stand in for a complex idea like bravery or governance.
Not at all. And this thing goes for things like justice or rights. Concepts of sovereignty, grievance, or legal agreements are completely beyond them.
Okay.
And here is the kicker, and this comes straight from the source material. I want everyone to really hear this.
Go on.
If we teach beyond children's developmental capacity, learning doesn't deepen, it dissolves.
It dissolves. That is a haunting phrase for an educator.
It means they check out. Or, worse, they get confused. If you try to tell a 4-year-old about the oppression of a people before they understand what a people even is, you aren't teaching social justice.
You're just confusing them.
You're just making noise.
So this leaves us in a bit of a bind. If we can't lecture them on history, and we can't use complex symbols like flags, and we can't talk about politics, then how do we actually teach culture? What's the mechanism?
We have to shift from teaching facts to modeling values. The sources propose 4 principles for this age group that replace the old flashcard method.
Okay, let's run through them. What is Principle A?
Lived experience over facts. Culture isn't a flashcard. It's not a list of capital cities. It is absorbed through participation.
So instead of showing a picture of a specific cultural food and saying, this is sushi, it comes from Japan, you
You eat it, you share it, you talk about the flavors, you make it a normal part of life, not a weird fact to memorize.
it becomes part of their lived reality.
Which leads to Principle B, action over explanation.
I love the example the source gave for this one regarding the environment. It felt like such a relief because I think we often overtalk these things.
Right. Instead of explaining why indigenous cultures honor the land or giving a lecture on environmental philosophy.
Just go outside and pick up rubbish.
Exactly. Care for a plant, do the act. The value is in the action, not the lecture.
So I don't need a script. I just need a trash bag and some gloves.
That's it. If you want to teach them that the land is important, show them that you take care of it. That sticks.
Okay, what's next?
Principle C is perhaps the most difficult for adults because it requires us to shut up. It's observation over interpretation.
This one really stood out to me. The expert advice is to ask, what do you notice? Rather than, what does this mean?
And that distinction is so important
Why?
because young children are brilliant observers but terrible interpreters. Interpretation requires abstract thinking. If you show them a piece of art and ask, what does this mean? They will just guess whatever they think you want to hear.
It means happy.
Right, they're just fishing for the right answer. But if you ask, what do you notice? They will say, I see curves, I see red, it looks fast. They are engaging directly with the material.
And that builds the skill of looking closely rather than just looking for the answer key. It validates their own perception.
Correct. And finally, Principle D, repetition over special days. This is the concept of spiral learning.
This is the anti-festival rule, right?
In a way, one-off culture days are actually less effective than low-intensity, high-frequency exposure.
So it's better to have a diverse range of books on the shelf all year round than to have one diversity week where you read them all and then put them away.
Exactly. It's about revisiting the same values like care or family through different entry points over time.
It makes sense. If you only talk about a culture on one specific day, you are practically screaming, this is unusual, this is not normal life.
You are othering it by putting it in a glass case. Look at this strange thing we only look at on Tuesdays.
And that actually leads us perfectly into the next section of our notes. What goes wrong when we teach culture poorly? Because the sources are pretty blunt about this.
They are. One of the documents references critiques from UNESCO regarding essentialism.
Essentialism. That's a hefty word. Let's unpack that. What does it actually look like in a classroom or a home?
Essentialism is when you treat a culture as a fixed, static list of traits, like a museum exhibit. The French do this, the Japanese do that.
So it ignores the fact that culture is living, breathing, and changing.
It freezes people in time, usually in the past.
It reminds me of the tourist approach we mentioned at the start, the flags, the costumes.
The UNESCO papers critique this heavily. When we rely on flags and food festivals, we risk creating distance rather than connection.
You highlight the differences so starkly that the child thinks, wow, those people are really different from me, rather than, hey, we both love eating with our families.
Right, and there is also a really interesting point about performance. The danger of asking children to perform a culture.
This is a big one.
It is. Think about the difference between acting on values versus acting out forms.
Okay.
Acting on values is cleaning up the playground. That's a shared human value. Acting out forms is asking a class of children to dress up in the traditional ceremonial clothing of a culture they don't belong to and mimic a sacred dance.
Right. One teaches responsibility, the other teaches, well, it teaches that culture is a costume.
Exactly. It trivializes it. It risks stereotyping. And honestly, it often just confuses the kids. They focus on the funny clothes or the movements, not the meaning behind them.
It just becomes a game of dress up.
And the sources also warn against over-explaining, which I am definitely guilty of. You want to give the full context, so you start explaining the deep symbolic meaning of a pattern.
And the 4-year-old is staring at a bug on the floor.
Every time.
And I keep talking louder, hoping it sinks in.
It leads to boredom, not respect. And again, it treats culture as information to be memorized rather than a practice to be lived. If the child is bored, they aren't learning respect. They're learning that culture is a chore.
Okay, so we know what not to do. No history lectures, no costume parties, no treating culture like a checklist. But what does it look like when we get it right?
Well, we have a really detailed case study here involving Māori culture, specifically for New Zealand contexts, but the principles seem to apply anywhere.
This is a great example of the framework in action.
The plan is broken down into 2 parts, belonging and care, and stories and expression.
Let's look at belonging and care. One of the activities is a whānau collage. Whānau means family, right?
Right, but it's a broader concept than just the nuclear family. It's the extended network. So the activity is that the children glue photos of their own families onto a page.
Wait, their own families? I thought they were learning about Māori culture.
This is the genius of it. You don't start by showing them a diagram of a Māori family tree or someone else's family. You start with the concept. Family.
Okay.
This is your whānau. Families come from different places. You are teaching the value that family is central to identity, which is a core Māori value, by connecting it to the child's own lived experience.
I see. So you're building the bridge. You're teaching the concept of identity and connection, not abstract genealogy.
Exactly. You establish the hook of belonging first,
Yeah.
and then there is the Kiwi sensory bin.
This one sounds fun. A play set up with land, sea, and a little kiwi bird figure.
And the activity is simply to remove rubbish or unsafe elements from the bin to protect the kiwi.
Simple play.
But profound learning. This teaches kaitiakitanga, the Māori concept of guardianship and care.
But notice what they aren't doing.
They aren't sitting on the parpet listening to a lecture about the Resource Management Act or environmental philosophy. They are physically protecting a vulnerable animal.
They are acting out the value.
Precisely. They learn, we take care of our place and we look after living things. That is cultural learning at age 4. It's engaging the care hook.
Then we move to part 2, stories and expression. And this is where it gets nuanced. There's an activity called haka observation.
Now, this is where many educators trip up. The haka is a powerful, traditional Māori challenge or posture dance. It's incredibly intense.
So the instinct for many teachers might be, okay, class, everyone stand up, stick out your tongue, stomp your feet, let's learn the haka.
Which falls right into the performance trap we talked about earlier.
Big time.
It risks mockery. It risks shallow imitation. The source is very emphatic. Children watch the haka. They observe.
They don't copy.
They do not copy. The lesson is observation. You ask, what do you notice?
I see them using their eyes, I hear loud voices. They look strong.
So the lesson isn't how to do a haka. The lesson is bodies can express energy and emotion.
Yes. It teaches respect for multimodal storytelling. It teaches that you can tell a story with your body, not just words, but it maintains a respectful boundary.
We are the audience. We are listening to their story. We aren't pretending to be them.
That is a crucial distinction. It's the difference between appreciation and appropriation.
Yeah.
Even at age 4, it teaches them that not everything belongs to them to take and use.
It does. And another activity is koru art. The koru is that spiral shape based on an unfurling silver fern frond.
It's everywhere in New Zealand art.
Instead of a long lecture on ancestry, the lesson is simple. The koru means growing. Children paint spirals. They connect a shape to a relatable concept, growth.
And then there's food, shared kai.
A simple boil-up. Potatoes, corn. Again, the focus isn't on the recipe's origin or the exotic ingredients. It is on the act of sharing and eating together as a group.
The lesson is community.
Exactly.
I love how grounded this is. It takes the pressure off the parent to be a cultural encyclopedia. You don't need to know everything. You just need to facilitate these moments of care and noticing.
That is the embedded approach, and that is really the key to transferring this framework to any culture.
Right, because our listeners aren't all in New Zealand. How do we apply this if we want to teach our kids about, say, our neighbor's culture or a classmate's background in Chicago or London?
The framework holds up. You look for the universals. Every culture has food. Every culture has family structures. Every culture has ways of caring for their environment.
So if I want to teach my child about their classmates' Indian culture, I shouldn't just buy a sari and dress up.
Please don't. Instead, maybe you look at art from that culture, look for patterns, ask, what do you notice? Maybe you listen to music and talk about how it makes your body feel. Maybe you share a meal and talk about how that family eats together.
It seems like the goal is to normalize the difference, not highlight it as a weird anomaly.
Exactly. The experts suggest a checklist for parents. First, am I explaining or am I modeling?
Good check.
Second, am I asking them to perform or inviting them to participate?
That's the costume versus cleaning up distinction.
And third, is this a one-off event or woven into our routine?
Spiral learning.
If you are revisiting these concepts like patterns tell stories across different contexts throughout the year, that is where the depth comes from.
So you might look at Māori patterns in January and Islamic geometric patterns in March.
And the connecting thread is patterns tell stories. That creates a deep structural understanding of culture rather than just a collection of trivia.
It really changes the role of the parent. You're not a lecturer, you're a guide.
You are, and you are also a learner. It's okay to say, I don't know what that means, let's look at it together. You don't have to be the expert.
So as we wrap this up, let's summarize the big takeaways. Because we've covered a lot of ground, from the deficits of the toddler brain to the ethics of the haka.
The headline is, Developmental Reality. Respect what the child can actually process. If you go too abstract, it dissolves.
And focus on lived experience over abstract facts.
Prioritize noticing over knowing. Don't worry about them memorizing the facts. Worry about them observing the world.
And remember that at this age, culture isn't a topic.
It's a way of being shown.
That is a great line. It's a way of being shown.
And I want to leave the listener with one final thought, which comes from that UNESCO deconstruction we looked at. It's a bit of a challenge to us adults.
Go for it.
We spend so much time worrying about how to teach culture to our kids. We want the right books, the right toys. But if we stop treating culture as a thing to be learned, like a list of facts or a museum exhibit, and start treating it as a way of relating to others, how does that change not just how we teach our kids, but how we interact with our own neighbors?
Ooh, that's good. It's not about the content, it's about the relationship.
Exactly. Are we just tourists with our neighbors looking at their weird ways, or are we actually connecting on the level of care and family?
Something to think about the next time you're tempted to just buy the International Food Taco Kit and call it a day.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.